Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danon, shalom.
Shalom, Yoni.
So you're completing your visit here to Israel. You're going back to the United Nations. What are your main goals now?
Yoni, we are waiting for the new president to come in. There are a lot of issues to discuss with President Trump. The Iranian threat, the threat from Yemen, what's happening in Lebanon, in Syria, and absolutely, the most important issue for us is the hostages. So we are preparing all those issues, and we will discuss them with the president and with his team. And I want to say something about the team that the president nominated. Excellent nominations. The ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, is a dear friend of mine. He came to visit us after October 7th. The ambassador to the UN, Elise Stefanik, she's a strong leader. And the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is also a supporter of Israel. So we expect that it will be easier for us to work with those friends.
Many hoped that after the horrendous massacre of October 7th, the world will be different. The United Nations will be different, but the UN is the UN, seems to have forgotten about that massacre and even about the hostages.
Unfortunately, the UN decided to forget about the hostages. But we will never forget them. We will continue to remind them why we are fighting in Gaza, why our soldiers are still there, because we have 100 hostages who are being tortured, starved in the tunnels of Hamas. So I see that my duty is to remind the ambassadors and the UN officials why we are in Gaza. We were forced to this war, and we will win this war.
Now, there are different agencies of the United Nations which we are dealing with. First of all, up north, UNIFIL.
So, some of the UN organs are not effective. Take, for example, the UNIFIL force. They are placed in the border between Israel and Lebanon. 13,000 soldiers. It's a big military force. But look what happened. Hezbollah ignored them and built bases on our border. That is why today we decided to take responsibility for our security. And also in the future, we will make sure that Hezbollah will not be able to do what they did in the past.
And in South and other areas, UNRWA.
Well, it's about time that there will be something else. UNRWA failed. They failed professionally and they failed morally. We proved that they supported Hamas. We proved that many of the terrorists who came into Israel on October 7th were getting paid by the UN through UNRWA. So we tell our colleagues in the UN, we're willing to work with other UN agencies, but we will not work with an organization that supports terrorism.
So as you mentioned, Trump is coming back to the White House. You have expectations?
Well, we saw President Trump in action already, and he was a dear, strong friend of Israel. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem, he recognized the Golan Heights, and he decided to take the right course regarding Iran. So we believe he will continue with the same direction, supporting the strongest ally of the US in the region, which is Israel. So we are very optimistic about that.
And Trump himself even warned that all hell will break out if the hostages aren't returned by his inauguration.
I think President Trump is aware of the condition that the hostages are being held, and he wants to see them back home. And we appreciate what he's saying. He wants to put pressure, and I think we have the responsibility to bring them back home.
Ambassador Danon, thank you very much.
Thank you, Yoni, for having me.